um, anyway, so yeah, it's great to be here with everyone, and I do wish that we could meet in person. And when it is safe to do so, I hope that we'll gather again. And some folks I've already met, and some are my esteemed colleagues, and I appreciate you for taking the time. I know that we all are doing so many things in Zoom and virtually these days. So, yet sitting again in front of another Zoom in a situation that would ordinarily be us kind of like mingling and walking around and being more social. I appreciate your willingness to adjust to this format and take the time to come meet me tonight. So a little bit, I'd like to kind of just share a little bit, I think, about my personal journey to gender and women's studies, and a little bit about my sort of academic background that JP was talking about. And I think it's important to state, and I usually start most of my kind of conversations or talks by letting people know that I'm an academic. I was not intending on a life in the academy. I was just someone who enjoyed knowledge and learning and had a lot of interest and intellectual curiosity and really enjoyed arts and like creative work and reading. And so I kind of happened into this life path. And I definitely my academic identity, I think, is always it's always a challenge for me. I'm always negotiating that. I'm a first generation college student, and that's a big part of who I am in the academic space as well. And yeah, this a little bit about me is I am from New Jersey, so this is the furthest I've ever lived in the United States, out west. Grew up in New Jersey, went to public schools there. It was the 80s during the Reagan era, and was an interesting time as an educator and a person who does educational research. Obviously, I keep up with what's going on in different states and different parts of the country. And it's interesting to see New Jersey so high in public education because it certainly wasn't when I was there during my time in school. Um, Even though we lived in a really multicultural area, we there were not a lot of Black people in the part of New Jersey where I grew up, and so it was very ethnically diverse at that time, but not very racially diverse in the parts of the community where we lived. I was raised by a single mom, and going to public school, it was interesting. I was the only Black child in my gifted program at my school. And just a lot of, so there was a lot of, from an early time, I think, I was very aware of sort of race, gender issues, although, of course, I didn't have academic language or intellectual sort of uh, discourse available to me to sort of understand and articulate some of the things that I experienced. But um, even though no one in my family went to college, I was lucky. I was an only child for a long time and an only grandchild. And my family was pretty attuned, right, to my interests. And my favorite thing as a kid was my speak and spell. And that just for those who remember, I was obsessed with mine. And that was speak and spell and like a Barbie and Madonna. Like that was my life in the 80s. And so it's really not a huge stretch that later I became like a feminist and I wanted to study popular culture and things like that, right? Interested in literacy. And so ultimately, I did a lot of programs at the library, did a lot of reading, and I liked film. I loved movies. I watched a lot of movies. And as a kid, I really, my real aspiration was to become the first Black female host of American movie classics. Um, and so that's why when JP talks about the conversation with Bell Hooks, we did a lot of it was about film and popular culture. And so I kind of lived little moments of that dream. I was happy to see that they finally have brought a Black woman on to AMC all these years later. Go figure. I could have been doing that, but I'm happy to be here, and I hope that my work in the space of GWS will reflect these different areas of interest and skills and talents. And so um, kind of from that my situation in New Jersey growing up, the things I was interested in, I ended up my family moved to Florida when I was in high school, and that's where I finished my education. And I went on to University of Florida, where I was an independent studies major. In other words, it was hard for me to isolate to one area. I was like, well, I like education and I like film and I like, humanities, but I don't want to do liberal arts because I don't want to do a bunch of foreign language. So it was just sort of me figuring it out, right? I think as a first gen, I feel lucky that it was sort of in the mid to late 90s because I think there was less pressure to decide or to know right away. And I think a lot of, nowadays, a lot of students do feel that pressure of like, I have to know what I'm going to do. I have to know what my major is. And I'm going through that with my oldest right now. And she likes like a bunch of things and she doesn't know. And I'm like, a lot of people don't know and a lot of people change, but I'm just the mom. She's not going to listen to me. So she'll figure it out. But I went in and kind of was undecided and did a lot of interdisciplinary kinds of training in my undergrad. And ultimately, I left the University of Florida with my associate arts degree, which also I feel ages me. People like associate arts degree because it's all sort of blended together now, right, on the way to the bachelor's. But at the time, you did your associate arts degree. And so I did that at University of Florida. And a lot of my film classes, my film professors, encouraged me. They said, maybe you would apply to film school. And I thought, oh, film school. And so I did that. I applied to film school and I got into the University of Central Florida's program, which was still pretty young at the time. Maybe they're about 10 years in. And so I went there and I did a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Arts and Sciences in film and screenwriting and production. And I realized that I liked screenwriting, but production was not for me. And I really enjoyed mostly the criticism and the analysis of film. And I double majored in English while I was there. So English literature was sort of my other area. And from that, I kind of came out with this really great two undergraduate degrees in English and in film. And I thought, I'll go on to film school in New York and I'll, maybe pursue criticism or get into, get more into that. And life happened and I ended up getting married and I had my daughter. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to delay this for now. And what will I do in the meantime? Because I have to work. So I became a teacher. And in the state of Florida at that time, there was a critical shortage of teachers. And so folks without education backgrounds were allowed to enter the classroom and sort of work on their degree as they went. And so that's how I started. I became an English teacher at a high school on the beach side in Daytona and began working toward my master's. Well, actually, I'll be honest, I was just going to do the state certification program for teaching because I thought it was just a stop on the way to something else. And so I wasn't necessarily super invested initially. And then it just kind of stole my heart, right? The relationships with the students and really working with like young people and teenagers and trying to get them excited about literature and get them talking about connecting to the different kind of the different topics that we were learning about and bringing popular culture into the classroom. And, I encourage my students to I've always loved music, so I encourage them to bring music in and let's journal about it and make your own soundtrack for Catcher in the Rye. Like, let's do all these cool things. And so, we were doing that. And as those relationships developed, I abandoned the county certification program and decided I would get my master's in education. And I went to Stetson University for that. And I did a master's in education that was literacy focused. And from there, I really enjoyed the media literacy component of that degree. And it fit with my interest in film analysis and thinking through media and thinking about discourse and, reading public culture, reading popular culture. All those things kind of came together in an interesting way for me. And I knew that one of the things that my students really enjoyed had to do with the curriculum that I developed and built originally for them, right? To connect them with more contemporary literature and to give them other kinds of writing opportunities and to help them, be critical about popular culture and the things they were interested in. And so hence my eventual moving toward curriculum and instruction for my PhD. Um, Along the way, I really always was sort of a feminist, and I let people know, like, while I do women and gender studies scholarship, I became a feminist really through 90s music, through girl bands and independent sort of women artists, Ani DeFranco and others who were, out there really singing about things that felt that they really spoke to my life and my experiences and dealing with, certain barriers, right? And also, the music really allowed me to have an outlet and a way to kind of understand racism and sexism and things that I was feeling. And, I felt there was a lot of energy that came from that and a lot of inspiration. And so I began to really identify as a feminist and read more, women's, get more into like women's documentaries and women filmmakers, and which there weren't many, but now we see so many, right? Because of social media and because of technology and some of the other changes that have really brought women more into the forefront. So that's been great. But even at that time, I was really interested in reading a lot of Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison and other folks who Black women who I discovered that really helped me in my own identity development in these spaces, as being a Black biracial woman with a white mom and not having anyone in my family who went to college, right? So sort of the books and the studies and reading about Black women and listening to feminist music really was critical in my development, both personally and professionally, I would say. And the PhD program at Penn State is where I ended up after kind of transitioning from being a high school and middle grades educator in Florida. The work I wanted to do, I think, was just a little too ahead of the curve for the spaces that I was in. And so I had a lot of support from parents. They loved the fact that their kids were excited about English and about like talking about masculinity and different things that we were doing, but not so much on the administrative side where they really wanted to focus on assessment in traditional ways, right? And so I couldn't really reconcile that at the time. And I didn't feel very supported at my school. So I was like, well, I've done this master's in education. There was an opportunity to start working at Bethune-Cookman, which is a historically Black college and university founded by Mary McLeod Bethune, amazing woman. And so I took it. I went ahead and transitioned, and that was my transition really into higher ed, was working at Bethune-Cookman. And I loved being there and working with the students. And I taught English classes. I taught in a global villages program, which really combined, kind of created small student cohorts. And those cohorts took their English class, their history class, et cetera, together. And we worked on a blended curriculum, and that was really cool. And it was right up my alley, and I fit in well there. And I was doing that work, and just with my master's degree, and folks were like, yeah, you should think about really making this a permanent switch, which, would require you to get a PhD. Wasn't really, again, something that was totally on my radar. I thought like master's degree, that sounded, and then I got my PhD. I applied only to Penn State after I did a bunch of research. I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to add the women's studies. They had a dual program in education women's studies available. So hence, that's where I applied. And I thought, well, if I get in, that's where I'm going to go. And if I don't get in, I'll just continue to, work in this capacity for a while. And then I had another pregnancy at that time. And so I got in, and then I was also having a baby. And so I started my PhD program with a 3-year-old and a baby, and people were like, you're crazy. And I was like, maybe, but here I am. So I'll just figure it out. And I will say that sort of that experience also, I think has made me more empathetic and more open and more able to connect with folks who have those kind of experiences and needs. and I benefited tremendously from really good early child care that was available at the Penn State campus. And I will say, Penn State has really great on-campus daycare and support for uh, students and employees. And so I was really lucky that my kids were able to go there and be on campus while I was on campus. It was very convenient for me. And without that, I just couldn't have done my degree, and I just wouldn't have been able to. So having that support and having that resource on campus was big. And also, I think, again, right, made me think more deeply about issues that women who are trying to advance their education and having to juggle and balance these things, we're facing. And so I finished my dual PhD at Penn State in 2011. So it's my 10-year anniversary this year. And I'm excited about that, but it's also crazy. And from there, I worked at, as JP said, I went on to a job at Berea College where I was in women and gender studies and African American studies. And from Berea, I went to App State for my first tenure track job. Berea was a visiting position, and I really enjoyed being there. I love the students. I have to admit, I don't know if I'll love students ever again the way that I did at Berea College. It's really special for those who don't know about Berea. It's for low income, and Appalachian students are prioritized there. And they have quite a large population of African American students, specifically from rural and low income areas and families. And so I think for me, it just really fit in many ways. Not the Appalachian piece because I'm from Jersey, but the other parts, the first generation and the low income, and a lot of the students had kids. And so Berea, you just kind of it was a really great pedagogical experience for me and building the kind of relationships because it's a smaller place. I really that was a highlight really in my career. And so leaving Berea, was hard, but I knew that I needed to pursue a tenure track job. That was what I wanted, and that's why I got my PhD. And so I moved on to Appalachian State, and at that time, began to do a lot more activist work around Black Lives Matter. So when I was in Kentucky, I was very involved in Kentuckians Against the War on Women. That was sort of happening at that time, and we were really pushing, going to Lexington a lot and connecting with folks at University of Kentucky to kind of push back on things that were happening in the state. As you see, we're not successful in our endeavors, but we keep on fighting. And my work really, again, it kind of shifted to doing more with Black Lives Matter when I got to Appalachian State and organizing with the Black Student Union there and really being, active in those ways in the community. At App State, which is in Boone, North Carolina. The year that I got there, Boone started its own chapter of the NAACP. And there was a lot of energy around the Moral Monday movement that was led by Reverend Barber. And folks were really starting to kind of connect different kind of disparities in the state and around race and around low income and poverty and other things that were happening. And so it was an interesting time to be there and to be part of those movements. And I really enjoyed teaching at App. I was in the College of Education primarily, but also teaching some women's studies coursework. And then I had the opportunity to come to U of A. And since I've been here, I came here, as JP said, in the English department and was able to start working in schools. With school partnerships through the Southern Arizona Writing Project and through the Wildcat Writers Program, and really loved being able to, it's sort of the best of both worlds for me. I kind of, was still working with schools, but I wasn't necessarily in a college of ed where it was strongly governed by, state priorities that weren't necessarily the priorities of the faculty within the program, right, and within the department. And it always had bothered me that we had one multicultural education class, yet we had 4 assessment classes, for example, that were required, right? So they're sort of, again, trying to balance some of those things. So I liked coming here in the sense that I could still work with schools, with students, with teachers, doing literacy and writing, but that I wouldn't have to necessarily enforce some of these degree requirements that, the state has in place for teachers. And I know I was a big proponent of Red for Ed, and I'm a big supporter of teachers and schools, and really want to work to sort of help critically empower folks in those spaces. And I'm hoping that some of what I can do in gender and women's studies, myself and some of my faculty colleagues are very interested in those community connections and in connecting to schools and to young people. I think one of the things that's sort of that makes me sad, that also energizes me, is the idea that a lot of people don't discover women and gender studies until later in life, right? And I think it's changing a little bit now because of social media. So that has its pros and cons in terms of the information being out there, but whose information and what, and what are our young people engaging with. But it's an exciting time to be doing this work and to be leading the department. We have great faculty, and we've hired a few folks in the last 2 years who are amazing. Darius Carter, who recently received a large national endowment from the Humanities, National Endowment for the Humanities grant to work on a book on Blaxploitation. Super excited for Darius. We've also welcomed Reed Gomez, who is about to co-teach a really interesting class with a colleague of mine in English that will look at critical theory, looking at race and feminist perspectives in critical theory. We have another new scholar, Wanda Alarcon, who's really interested in Chicana music and sound studies. And also Kelsey John, who was a postdoc with us and is now in American Indian Studies and Gender and Women's Studies, and does really great work on animals, specifically on horses, and is she's just doing a lot of really cool research. And we're super excited for these folks to be joining us. We had another faculty member recently, Ava Hayward, received tenure and promotion last year. So Ava's doing really interesting work across disciplines as well, trans studies and other spaces. We have another one of our amazing faculty members, Dr. Sandy Soto, is currently working on a national endowment for the arts grant that would be about communities and literacy, the big read. So we've got a lot going on, and it's an exciting time in spite of COVID and having to really move everything online and to really think through what it means for our students and for our pedagogies, and keeping pace with all those things. But we're still standing, and it's been great to see folks supporting each other around their teaching and around helping our graduate students. And we're very excited that we will welcome a new cohort of graduate students next year. So we'll be going into the admissions process. We didn't last year with COVID mainly happening, and a lot of changes, and really having to, it's been good. It would have been really hard, I think, to support new students this year. The students we have really, have been struggling, and we've wanted to be there for them. And we've been able to do that in a way that I think might have been more challenging had we had brand new students as well. So I think, it freed us up to lend support. And speaking of our students, they're also rock stars. Many of our students are on amazing fellowships and scholarships and finishing their work. We've recently had 2 dissertation defenses. We have about 3 students now who are sort of in the pipeline to defend, and they have job interviews. So I'm actually helping them prepare. Several of us in the department are helping folks prepare for that. And we're super excited at those possibilities. We have an amazing grad student. We have a panel coming up through WOSAC where some of our grad students will actually present their work. And we had a really amazing salon with 2 of our new faculty members who I already mentioned, Dr. Wanda Alarcon and Dr. Kelsey John. They both talked about their current research this past December. I think it was toward the end of the semester in the WOSAC salon, and some of you were able to be there. And I thought that was really incredible to hear what they're doing. We are connecting more with CIRO, with the Southwestern Institute for Research on Women, on some of their projects. And what we're really hoping is that, we will kind of, find those synergies and really amplify them as we move forward. And thinking about how can we, when we bring this new graduate cohort, for example, how can some of those students maybe fit into what CIRO is doing and some of the applied projects. And I think one of my visions as chair, one of the things that I hope to do as we move forward is to really, I want everyone to feel valued and supported who's a part of gender and women's studies, the whole community. So the faculty, the amazing staff, the students, the graduate students, and all of you, right, who are part of our community as well through WOSAC or through your, belief and commitment to the Women's Plaza and all the spaces that we touch. I want folks to feel valued and connected and like there's a place for everyone here as we do this really critical work that our moment, nationally and globally kind of calls for, right? I mean, I think about the ways in which ecofeminism and sustainability and climate concern and women and gender issues, all of these things are so urgent. And we have a way that we approach this that is unique and that is necessary. And so, in spite of some of the challenges and some of the other institutional priorities, I know that we're well positioned to do the work that is needed through our pedagogy and our research, and looking forward to really bringing in a cohort of students who really reflect the interdisciplinarity of the field and who will do applied research, who will do community-based research, who will also maybe, do arts-based things as well, all through sort of feminist theory and pedagogies and interdisciplinary commitment to interdisciplinary scholarship and excellence. And so, yeah, that's sort of my vision. I'm still very new, so I'm navigating and juggling a lot. Just the second semester here, but the first semester, in spite of COVID and in spite of some other challenges, I'm proud to say that we did a lot and we feel good about the work with our students and, within the unit. And as we go forward, more to come. And we're excited for the things that are on the horizon, which, as I said, include bringing a new cohort and going through our program review, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be excited about. I'm excited about it because there is a self-study component where I will get to learn even more about like the history and the things that that we've developed and have gone on, and it'll give us a chance to really evaluate and reflect and prioritize, right, about the kind of curriculum and the kind of program that we want to be in the future and as we move forward. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. And we have an initiative right now also for the Women's Plaza of Honor. We're really trying to get a bench for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We'd really love to honor RBG in that space. And another thing that I'm hoping to really do is to work on the Women's Plaza of Honor as a space that's both local and national in profile and who we honor there, and in how that sort of reflects, becomes I would like that to become an iconic space in the community and within the women and gender studies community. So I will stop there and allow folks to ask questions. That'd be amazing to hear from you.